Today, we're going to be performing a deep dive on the XAU OneShot EA. This video is sponsored by the Prosperity Algo Affiliate Program. Affiliates earn 30% commission on all sales made, which is currently $300 per sale. Click the link in the description to get your affiliate link. This bot originally caught my attention because it seems to be following a real strategy with no martingale or any sort of crazy kind of fake curve fitting style premise behind it. So I wanted to take a look at it just to understand what's it doing, is it a real system, and does it have a long-term sustainable edge? So let's dive in. Here on the sales page, the one thing which I would knock against it is that there's no live signal. There's not even any demo signal. And as it's been around for over a month or roughly a month by now, you would think to see something, but perhaps the developer is still working on it and it might be coming up shortly. But effectively here we can see that it focuses on single position trades and it trades around 2 to 3 times a day. And that's a good sign because it means that if it's only holding one position at a time, it's probably not a grid martingale. So it's not pyramiding or using any sort of like averaging into losing positions. And it also appears to have a fairly decent risk reward with a stop loss to TP ratio, which is a 1-to-1. There is a trailing stop, which will kick in a bit earlier. So I think we're going to see a slightly inverted risk reward here. However, usually that means the win rate is a bit higher. So all of that looks pretty solid to me. And it trades gold on the H1. But really the main thing that stood out to me was looking at this equity curve here, where we can see it looks good, but it's also not perfect. So it shows that we're having quite a few different losers here. We're having some little drawdown periods, some flat periods. So all of which is a good sign actually, because if something goes straight up, it's usually heavily manipulated. So all of it's looking pretty solid to date. And now I actually took the liberty of downloading the bot and running a back test. And it appears to be doing what he says it's doing, where it's taking more, like only a few trades a day, and they're more swing trading in nature. Like if we look at some of these actual trades, like they're going by like 0.5%, or like these are quite significant moves. Like some of them are actually rather large. And if we look at them here, we can see that all of the different numbers he said, like stop loss, take profit, are actually matching the description, all of which is really, really good. He's also using a news filter, as he mentioned, and a few different kind of order management functions. One thing to note is it looks like a mean reversion strategy so far to me. So curious as to how we're actually getting this kind of performance with that. But to speak to performance, if we go to the backtest graph, we can see that it's looking really, really good. And this is, yeah, it looks like a 1-to-1 risk reward. We're seeing a little bit of kind of curving here towards the end, which is not a great sign. Obviously, it can have flat periods, but this thing was released on the 17th of April. And we're seeing that this is around, like the 17th would be here. And it's just starting to curve down there. So it could very well just be a normal, like not so amazing period. But it could also be an indication that something worse is happening. And I ran this back test until the 20th of May. So that is going to be today-ish roughly as well. Or pardon me, today's the 10th, so it's going to be beyond today. And that means that we're able to see that it's still trading now, but it hasn't been performing quite as well in these past few days. So far it's looking pretty solid, but the one thing which I find a bit odd is that it is trading more of a mean aversion strategy on gold, which I have found to be pretty tough if you're not using it as a night scalper. So some of them are happening at night, but we're also seeing some that happen like dead in the middle of European and London sessions. Therefore, that could potentially be not a great idea, particularly like during some of these really big rallies in gold. It was still shorting pretty heavily, so not quite sure what he's done there, but you never know. So let's run ourselves a visual back test to get a bit more of an understanding. So far, like from a pure statistical back test perspective, it looks great. Like we're having a like slightly inverted risk reward, but with a 70% win rate. So that's actually really, really solid. And it does not appear to be a history reader. It is going relatively quickly. So all of that looks pretty good. And the drawdowns as well are very modest at 7%. So if this is a real system and it's not over optimized, that's really good. However, unfortunately, you never know. So here we're seeing that it's, oh, perfect. So it's using pending orders. Let me try and see if it's placing limit orders, if it's placing market orders. we're seeing it's just buying. Okay, so it's not actually placing a limit order. These are just all market orders from what I can see so far. Yep, they're all market. Okay. And let's see if we see any indicators. Oh yeah, listen, moving averages here. And are we seeing any Bollinger Bands or oscillators? Nope, nothing there. So I'm rather curious to see what the exact trigger would be, because there is a trend filter here at the two moving averages. Maybe he's waiting for like a pullback between the two moving averages to buy, or he's waiting for, alternatively, like price exits the moving averages and it takes a short. So it does appear to be indicator based, but there's nothing like too insane going on. Like sometimes you see an indicator based system and it's just like really over optimized. There's a whole plethora of indicators there, like they're just stacking RSI on top of Bollinger Band on top of moving averages, and those almost always fail. But from what I can see here, it does appear to be following likely some sort of thought out strategy. I'm just still a bit skeptical that something is able to work like this on gold with this big mean reversion system, just because I have not seen it. I personally have found this to be pretty challenging to do, just because gold is a fairly trending asset, and doing this type of fairly straightforward mean reversion system tends to be a bit challenging. If we look at the history, I was assuming that it might be following like some sort of time-based strategy. And if we look at some of the ins, for instance, we can see that they tend to be happening at pretty different times. Maybe it's like an intra-session one, because there's some which happen, let's look for the ins, for instance. We can see at the beginning of Asian session, and some of them are happening then. We're seeing some kind of more towards the end of the day. So that could also be Asian session. Some of them are happening in New York. So I think I might actually know what it's doing. It seems to be trying to trade like the intra-session moves. So like at the start of New York session, it takes a short and it essentially assumes that there's going to be a retracement from the start of that session. And at the same time, it's also using, like sometimes before Asian session, it seems to be entering in a similar premise. Same thing here with the sort of European session. So that could very well be what it's doing, where it's trying to trade essentially like a mean reversion premise between the sessions, and be based, like the trigger could be time-based, like time-based along with something in regards to perhaps a candlestick move or some sort of like general move from a moving average. And that is then being coupled with some moving average filters. So there could very well be a real strategy here, and the backtests do look impressive. Nothing history reading about it. One caveat, we should see a live signal, right? Because I'm always a little bit skeptical about trying to do a mean reversion on gold, particularly when such a strong trending environment, but it looks pretty good in the backtest. So I think just to validate that, we would need to see a live signal to see if it's working well, particularly because this is a more like a medium price bot at around $600. So I think I'd be looking to see that. But overall, it's still actually a pretty interesting premise. If this actually is a real strategy and it does perform well live, it could be super cool. Like trading essentially like how like a trend change between sessions. That is something which you do see sometimes in currencies, but less common in gold. However, it could be interesting if it can be applied in gold. So guys, let me know, have you tested this one? Have you seen anything else? Am I missing something? Always love to hear your feedback. So just drop me a comment below with any ideas or any feedback. Take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.